being seen doesn't always have to be about letting others know that we see you.
Yeah.
You also have to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
Make sure that you see yourself.
That part.
Sometimes you have to be your own mirror.
So, welcome back to another episode of the To Be Seen podcast. I'm here with one of my friends, Kevin Rawls.
Hi.
Yeah, I'll kind of let him introduce himself, and I'll go into our story of how we got here on the couch.
How we got here. So, like she said, my name's Kev. Call me Kev, Killer Kev, whatever. I'm a photographer in Houston. I've been doing photography for about 8 years. Mostly do a lot of concert photography. That's my passion, but I'm experienced in a lot of other things. I actually don't like doing weddings, so I don't know how we got here.
Yeah.
Of course, like she said, we're gonna get into that. I have a YouTube channel as well. Me and my buddy, who's another Kevin, that I went to school with. We do reaction videos, any kind of music, pop, hip hop, R&B, you name it. So, yeah.
That's his background. He's another creative.
Yes.
That's why he's in my circle.
Correct. Correct.
So we're kind of, for this episode, we're calling it a wind down.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like how we set the tone.
Facts.
That's how we got here. A little bit about how this podcast was birthed was, it was a rough week.
It was.
And for the both of us.
Very rough.
And Kevin came over here for us to kind of like basically wind down.
Right, yeah.
and go over the stresses and everything that was on our heart that was kind of weighing on us at the time. And we were just sipping on some wine, talking about life, and
naturally, as usual, as creatives, it just went into photography.
Yeah. We were going into photography, talking about business, all of the strategies, all of the things. And I think at one point, Kevin was just like, we could have recorded this whole conversation.
Literally.
We could have just recorded this whole thing for someone else to hear. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going
Why not?
Gonna do it. So, yeah, Kevin's kind of the motivator of how this began. So
let's say I'm the catalyst, maybe a spark, but you know.
Yeah. So naturally he had to be a guest on the show. Kevin is not a co-host. Let's just clear that up.
Hey, you know what? Don't say never.
Guest on the show.
Never say never.
Not co-host of the show.
One thing I do love, I love being on a podcast. I always got something to say. So
he might make a couple appearances, but he is a guest,
where it starts.
Not a co-host.
It's from to be seen to be featured.
Oh my gosh.
This is where it begins.
So yeah. So do you want to tell him the story of how we met? Maybe there's your version.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe you saw it differently.
Matter of fact, cheers while we start.
Yeah, please.
To the wind down.
Crazy how this began. It started with wine and we returned with wine.
Exactly.
So how did we meet? Refresh me on what concert it was.
Okay, we went to, it was the Eric Bellinger, Trevor Jackson concert.
Yes. It was at Warehouse.
Yeah.
I was shooting it. A couple of other people were shooting it there. And my boy, he got some mutual friends, I guess. And I think you know Scooby, right?
I've heard of Scooby. We never actually met.
Really? So I thought you knew Scooby. Okay, cool. All right. So I knew Scooby, but she didn't know Scooby. But me and Scooby were both there shooting it. And then her friend was also kind of there shooting it. I can't remember if I got her in there or if she kind of like finessed her way in. I think she was a security guard. And so, yeah, me, her friend, and then my boy Scoob were all shooting. And then we got together like afterwards during the meet and greet with Trevor Jackson. And we all just kind of came together. We're like, okay, cool. Nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a friend that was DJing down the street from Warehouse. So we were like, well, shoot.
Let's go to the next spot.
Yeah. The party ain't got in here. So went to the next spot. I'm gonna let you.
Anyways, yeah, that's true. So yeah, we met at the concert, and there were mutual friends there. My friend knew them, and we kind of all learned that we were all photographers and creatives in the city. And naturally we're like, oh, we're besties at this point because we know the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And like he said, after the concert, we went to our own after party, kind of lived life there.
Yeah, right. That's the appropriate way to put it. Absolutely.
Live life there. Sure. And kind of been cool ever since that one night. And I think it's just crazy how you can kind of have one night that shifts you the way that it did.
Facts.
So, yeah, as creatives, I think naturally Kevin and I kind of gravitate towards each other simply because you understand and I understand.
Yeah.
And at this point, I can just text Kevin and be like, you know what, Kevin, I'm not okay. I am not okay today. It is not a day for me to be okay.
Yeah.
And he understands just as a person, as a creative, as another photographer. So yeah, that's kind of how this friendship and podcast and et cetera, has started. So how did you get here? How did you get into photography and concerts and all of the things?
So I was watching your first introductory podcast, and I'm like, did we ever even go over that? I don't know if we ever even got into that.
Did we? About how you started?
About how I even started.
We didn't.
When you were talking about how you got into it, if I'm not mistaken, you were like, YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly how I got into photography.
Yeah.
So, like I said, in college, me and my boy Kev, you know, we're kind of like funny guys. Like everybody knew us, and we were both roommates. So you'd see one, you'd always see the other. We're always cracking jokes. They're like, man, y'all should have a show.
Yeah.
They've been telling us this, you know, since whatever. I'm not even gonna say how old we are. That'll date me. But when YouTube was just getting off the ground, had we started it back then, ain't no telling where we would have been. But that's beside the point. So, fast forward. This was 2017, and right around that time, a bunch of like skits. People were always making skits. It was like a trend. If you were making skits on YouTube and Instagram, like you were blowing up being famous. Like now that's where the Drewskis are coming from, and I forgot the other guy's name, but everybody's making skits. So we're like, okay, this is the time to do it. Now I kind of had an interest in photography, but I shied away from it because I thought it was just so expensive.
Yeah.
Looking back on
it now, is
kind of right. But yeah, I just never had an interest to just buy a camera. Like, what am I going to do with it? I'm not going to take it seriously. So I had Kev at the time. He was like, look, let's just get a cheap camera. We'll split it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he found a deal for like $600 or whatever, 700. So split it down the ways, $350. Got the camera. At the time, I had 2 jobs. I was working for the radio station and I was working for the Rockets. And so I had a natural interest in like social media and, you know, just being a creative.
Yeah.
And when we got the camera, we were doing skits, recording things. And then when we weren't doing those, he did music on the side.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, you kind of are good at taking photos or you want to learn about it. I need photography stuff. Like I need an album cover, I need stuff. Why not? So we can both practice. So we would just go to Discovery Green or whatever, different places. We just play around with the camera. And that's kind of how I learned how to do it. And then he had no use for it, so I kept it.
Yeah.
Whenever we weren't using it. So in those times, I'd either be at the house trying to experiment. I'd be at my job at the Rockets on job training. You know, I'm shooting athletes, I'm shooting events, so I'm getting that experience. And then at the other job, the radio, that's in music. So that's where my passion for music photography came from. Like, we have to be at these shows covering them. Bring your camera. You have to record these on-talent people at events showing up or doing interviews. Bring your camera. So it was kind of like a fast track into having to learn how to get comfortable around using the camera. And then, I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it. Like, I couldn't put it down after that, but YouTube is really how I got here.
It's crazy how like one thing can kind of step you into the next thing, into the next thing, into the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it like how this has evolved where you show up to one concert, you meet people that have now connected you, and a podcast has now started from it, a friendship has now started from it, and you know, you ask me whatever questions you need to learn more about the business and all those things where it's like, to me, if I didn't show up to or try to do YouTube back in the day, I wouldn't have turned this direction, or if I wouldn't have went to the concert. And sounds like it's the same thing for you. If you hadn't have like decided with the other Kevin, like, hey, let's try this.
This may not even be the avenue.
Yeah.
You know, this may not happen.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to pivot, is to just be like, you know what? Sometimes you just show up. So I think that's like, it's something that we've kind of
Definitely
aligned with.
yeah, because that's how this was birthed. That was
Yeah.
my whole thing that I was preaching the last time I came, was like, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be right off the bat. I can attest to that. People were telling me,
Yeah.
like, everybody has to go through that at some point. People were telling me when I first started, like, and I still kind of go through this, taking photos. They'd be like, bro, post it.
Yeah.
Post them photos. And as a creative, some people can realize, you know, we kind of empathize with that and relate, as far as, oh, we feel like whatever we put out isn't our best product. We can be proud of it all we want to, but then when it comes to showing other people in the public,
Yeah.
you know, we get so critical. We're our own biggest critic.
Yeah.
And then we're so critical, and we're so hard on ourselves, and like, oh, well, if I put it out, nobody's gonna like it. Or I should have cropped this, you know, a couple centimeters. Oh, I should have made it black and white instead of having it in color.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have flipped it and made it horizontal instead of vertical. Like, there's just so many things. It's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, we have the viewers aspect, I guess, in mind, but at the same time, we all know art is very subjective.
Yeah.
It can be viewed in so many different ways. And it's for the people to understand where we're coming from. It's not for us to understand where they're coming from. We're supposed to portray whatever we see and how we feel. We put it out there, and then if they're cool, if they like it, bet.
Yeah.
If not, hey, that's why it's subjective. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but that doesn't make it fact.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, because it made me think of when I was texting, and I'm like, before the podcast was starting, and I'm like, I don't have this and I don't have that, and I need to, and you're like, we got to get to the first episode.
Right,
we gotta film the first episode first, and then we'll go forward.
We'll get there.
So my question is then, how do you deal with imposter syndrome, or do you deal with it on a regular basis? Or
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like you almost really never get rid of imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
especially when you're creative. Like, everybody goes through it, whatever profession or walk of life that you're in. I get through it. One, you know, I have a really great support system, so people are hard on me, but they build me up. You know, it's great constructive criticism.
Yeah.
So they continue to show up and let me know, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, first of all, we already know you're talented.
Yeah.
We've seen what you could do. We've seen what happens when you post things that we told you to post. People are showing up. They're in the comments. You're getting these likes. Like, it's not an issue. So just put the stuff out there.
Yeah.
So I constantly have to remind myself. But then, you know, there are times where they can't be there, or they don't have to tell me. I get on myself because it's draining. It's very frustrating going through imposter syndrome, because it weighs you down. It's like, you kind of have to wake yourself up and be like, why am I even feeling like this? You know, you have to constantly build yourself up. Like, before, we were setting all this stuff up, and you're like, oh, I'm so proud of myself, Angela. Look at this setup. Like,
look at this setup.
I'm that chick. I really did this, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to always be present in that moment. Like, this ain't no accident. Like, that's exactly what I told you. I'm like, bro, do you not understand? You already came from the YouTube space, like, and it was a proven success. And then what you're already doing, I was telling my friend this. I said, first of all, my friend Angela's awesome. She just made this podcast, and for some reason, she's not hearing it.
I know, struggling.
I was banging the table last time, and I was like, dog. She was like, well, you know, does she really want to do this? Or, you know, how? I'm like, bro, she can't do this. I don't know if she realized it yet. I'm like, compared to what you're doing, it's like, I forgot how I described it to her.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's like flying a plane compared to driving a car.
Mhm.
I would say the podcast is like, honestly, riding a bike for Angela.
Yeah. Oh, Kevin.
Riding a bike for Angela. Doing the wedding stuff. She already knows how to film and cut her own crap. Like,
Yeah.
that's flying the plane. And Lord knows, I'm not trying to fly no flights. Not everybody is built to be flying flights. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'll just stick to driving my cars. That's what I know how to do. I'm not a plane flyer. She's a plane flyer. So this right here is on autopilot. That's why I'm like, what are you talking about? We can easily get this off the ground.
He was saying that.
I'm dead
Right. We were talking about that so many times, and we went into like a rabbit hole of all the stuff that we've done. And I remember, like, that conversation was like really pivotal for me, because it made me learn to give myself grace more.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, remember I was showing you one of the first videos I filmed, and I'm like, old Angela was terrified to get out there and film by herself. That was 4 years ago. And I'm like, I'm looking at the video, I'm like, I was it's still so dope.
It was still crispy. It was so crispy.
I'm
like, talking.
I was so hard on myself about it. And I'm like, that imposter syndrome will kind of hinder you, almost put you in some shackles sometimes because you're thinking like, this isn't good, or maybe I shouldn't share it, or whatever, all the negative things. And in reality, it's like, it's kind of beastie. And even honestly, even if it's not, it's something that you're learning to do. And I think that's the whole reason why we kind of landed on the podcast. It's like, you're still, you can still do anything, even if it's not as perfect as you think it is. It can be picked apart by anyone, but you might as well show up and do it anyway.
What's crazy about it is that one thing to kind of help, I wouldn't say get out of it, but feel more comfortable with the imposter syndrome, one is knowing that you're not the only person.
Yeah.
So like, obviously I go through it, creatives, we all go through it, whoever it is out there in their profession or whatever they do, you're not alone. Everybody goes through imposter syndrome. That's the first thing. Then number two, like they say, comparison is a thief of joy. And that's where a lot of people's imposter syndrome comes from. We try to compare ourselves to other people and we feel like we don't measure up. And then number three, which honestly, kind of like in my case, I don't know if it helps me, but I feel like Angela way better creative than I am. And she got imposter syndrome? What am I doing? You know, like, what the heck? You should not be comparing yourself to I. That's crazy. It's like, why are you, like, I see that and I'm like, okay, what are you doing? We're having a conversation here and you're trying to have a conversation with me.
No.
Like, I appreciate it, but like, you need to give yourself some credit, some grace. So I feel like you have to know exactly where you're at, what lane that you're in, and then own it. Like, just be comfortable in it.
Yeah.
I'm here for a reason.
Yeah. And it's been a journey for me, and I'm trying to, and I was having this conversation with my friend like 2 weeks ago, and I realized that what I was doing was I kept moving the finish line. So like, let's say my original goal was, oh yeah, I want to learn to use a gimbal when I film.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I learned that, but then I was like, but I got to learn to fly the drone and do this and do that. So the finish line to me kept getting moved, and I never was proud of myself because I was like, but then so-and-so's doing this and that, and I haven't learned to audio, I haven't beasted this and that. And I'm just like, okay, Angela, but then I turn around and I'm like, oh, look how far
I just did.
Yeah, you haven't reached this finish line that you keep moving, but look how far you are from where you started when you didn't even know how to use a camera. Now you have a whole setup that you've done, and I had to kind of be like, it's okay. Like, you're doing amazing, sweetie. Like, you're doing amazing, sweetie. So yeah, and I think a lot of people see me and don't think that I go through that. And when I go through that a lot, and I'm just like, I don't know if it motivates me to be better, but I'm at the point where I'm just like, okay, but clap for yourself.
Definitely.
Like, clap for yourself. So
yeah, you don't want to get stuck in a position where you keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
Like, you don't realize, like, that's what happens when it's like you're moving forward, but at the same time, like, it's okay to look at the score.
Yeah.
Like, scoreboard's back here. You're up.
Yeah.
Like,
and give yourself,
you're in the lead, man. You just scored like 20 times. You're good. Like,
yeah.
And you always feel like, no, it's not enough. Like, they could catch up. They could beat us, you know? Like, no, you're fine.
Right. And I have to check in with myself and be like, okay, what was your ultimate goal? This is something that I've done this year so many times with my friends, because Angela 2 years ago would be like, oh, I want to book 30 weddings or 20 or whatever, like a certain number of weddings. Then you get there and you're like, okay, didn't make me feel the joy. Like, it didn't measure to the success or whatever that I thought it was going to make me feel or whatever. But now lately I check in and I say, okay, so-and-so's done 3 weddings. I'm seeing all this stuff online as a creative. Like, you know, like you said, there's a lot of comparing going on. But for me to combat it more and more, I go and I say, is that your goal? What is your goal? Okay, you don't have a wedding this weekend. You don't have this and that and this and that. But what was your goal? Your goal is to pivot. Your goal, at least my goal lately, is to start this podcast, to be more authentic to myself, to get more in front of the camera. So when so-and-so is flying to Jamaica doing that wedding, I go, that's amazing for them.
Great for them.
That is not my goal.
Just because they are doesn't mean I'm not.
And exactly. And it's like, that also teaches you to authentically clap for other people and then also still be proud of
yourself.
Yeah.
That's their journey.
That's their journey.
And you can't be comparing what somebody else is doing to where you're at.
Right.
Because in hindsight, they could be in Jamaica and miserable, looking at Angela Lawrence's page and be like, oh, she actually got that podcast going.
Yeah.
I'm not making no content over here in Jamaica.
Yeah, because I've been there. I've been in that space where I was like, I want to get this travel wedding. I want to do this and that. And I'm like, okay, now I'm like, my goal is to feel joy. My goal is to feel happiness. My goal is to feel like I'm living rather than trying to always reach a certain thing. Like, so yeah, that's my new thing, is checking in with myself and being like, oh my God, okay, so-and-so is going to Greece for a wedding, or so-and-so's interviewing whatever celebrity. And I'm like, that's so beautiful for them. And what are we doing, Ange? Okay, right now we're resting. That's our goal. Our goal is to rest. And that's okay too. So yeah, that's my new thing that I'm learning is, and I tell all my friends when they feel like they're not doing enough, I'm like, you're working on your goal. That is your goal. Now, if your goal is like to go interview that celebrity, maybe you should DM them, figure out how they got there. But if that's nowhere near what you've set for yourself, then why not just clap for them? And then also clap for yourself.
Also clap for yourself.
You can't gather all the eggs and be like, but I want this and that. That looks pretty too. And like, that's not your thing. Like, you're supposed to focus on grabbing your egg. They're going to grab theirs too. And we all say, I'm glad you got yours. I got mine too.
Being seen doesn't always have to be about letting others know.
Yeah.
We see you.
Yeah.
You also have to show for yourself.
Yeah.
Make sure that you see yourself.
That part.
Sometimes you have to be your own mirror.
Yeah.
Sometimes like it's important for others to hold it up for you and be like, hey, you look great.
Yeah.
And you also have to be able to tell yourself that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think there can be a misconception of showing up and being seen means you're validated by other people's views.
Some people live by that.
And some people live by
social media.
Yeah.
I only got 126 likes on this.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
And it's like, but you thought it was amazing, right?
It was amazing right before you posted it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That should be it. And some people are looking at you like 126. Oh my God, I only had 30. And there's always some measurement. There's always some measurement that you are not doing enough of, or you could be doing a lot of to someone else. But to be seen, your validation is what matters most. Your own validation of yourself and how you're moving. So, yeah, that has started the podcast.
Man, I was just thinking, I was like, a good reel right there.
That's how we started.
That's a great reel.
But I'm going to let Kevin, because Kevin told me that he had questions for me because, you know, he wants to be my co-host. So.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'll make a great co-host.
I think because it's a wind down, so we won't, I would just stick to asking Kevin questions. We'll kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
And learn about.
So my first, obviously, like I said, I do music photography, and I also help with this publication called Low Key R&B. So
I love that.
Please look us up. We don't have any content on YouTube like a lot right now, but you can look us up. But
they're working on it.
Working on it though. Instagram is definitely popping. We got some great interviews coming up, and I'm not lying.
Low Key R&B on
Low Key R&B on Instagram. Please look us up. Forgot where I was going with that. Oh yes, I'm no stranger to doing interviews. So I not only answer the questions, I ask them. So my first question before the follow up would be, how did you get into wedding photography, and how do you feel about it? Like, what is your temperature toward it?
Okay, because we're honest on this podcast.
We are.
Okay, so if you didn't watch the first episode, I own a photography and videography business that specializes in weddings, based in Houston, but I travel everywhere. And I'll tell you a story about kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
So I knew when I first started photography, I was doing mostly portrait sessions, which is like families, um just people, right? That are, it's not just events, but you're like, you can book a studio or outside and just capture people. Those are
Okay.
portrait sessions. Um, and it wasn't, quite frankly, making enough money.
Yep.
And I had my partner at the time, my ex-boyfriend who was helping me with the business, had a friend that was like, "Can y'all capture our wedding?"
Okay.
And we went, did it, and it was fun. It was fun because you're doing portraits, but you're also in someone's life event, and then they're partying.
Correct.
It was like, okay, I'd been working in corporate and whatever, but this is the most fun I've done and the most fun I've had making money.
That's right.
And you're also being creative, but then you can kind of like be a fly on the wall and just capture what's going on.
Yeah.
Obviously there's more of a skill to it as you progress, but I was like, this is it. Like, what?
Yeah.
But I didn't have the portfolio to kind of sell myself fully. And I remember, and I said this in Anne's episode, I remember I used to kind of like get on Facebook, see who had just gotten married, and kind of like cold call them or like cold message them. And I don't know, that idea took off.
Yeah.
Because people aren't expecting you to kind of offer your services personally.
Yeah. Sometimes they find you, or most of the time they find you.
Right. But because they weren't going to find me because I didn't have the portfolio, I was like, I want to shoot my shot. I got to shoot my shot. And I only had portrait work at the time because I can capture my family anytime, but they knew I could do it. So I could work a camera.
Oh, man.
I knew I could work a camera, but my skill level of like what happens at a wedding, I was not keen on. Like, did not know like what timelines were and like all those things. So I kind of threw myself in the fire. But okay, your second part of the question is like, how do I feel about it? So that's kind of how I got started. But I've been doing weddings for 6+ years now, like, and it's hard. Doing weddings are hard. Fun and like good spectator sport, but hard. Because there's a lot of responsibility there, and being a human being and cameras can malfunction, and there's a lot of anxiety that goes a part of like, I have to make sure that this one day that people have spent so much money on is captured well, because what I do is the only thing that they can relive.
Remember.
Yeah. What I do is the only thing that they can relive it through. Like the planner can't give them anything. The planner's only setting it up. All the other vendors are giving the experience right then and there. But what I do is what's going to live on
forever.
And
how we tell the story.
Yeah, and how you tell the story. And sometimes wedding days don't go as they envision. And sometimes they still think that that's your responsibility. If it's raining, if something's behind, it still needs to look good on your part. And that's hard.
Yeah.
So I've kind of gotten beat down over the years.
Yeah.
But my skill level is in that. I still have a good love for it, but it's still hard. That was a long-winded answer for that it's hard.
It's well thought out though, because it makes sense. Like that's why, I mean, everybody has a skill set that they're into. You're into weddings. I love concerts. Like,
yeah,
there's always a thing. But that's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like I always say you're not a real photographer or creative unless you go through one of those moments, like where something goes wrong, you forget a battery, something dies.
Oh my goodness.
Audio didn't record. Like, what are you talking about? You have to know how to troubleshoot through those moments. Because, I mean, you kind of have to go through it. Because if you don't, how are you going to know how to get through it?
Can we talk about that for a second?
Please.
Okay, there was an example. Because I think people see us and they think because we present what we can on Instagram, obviously, and they're like, oh, they got it figured out.
Yeah.
They got it figured out. Okay, there was one situation. Please don't judge me. When I was first learning to film weddings, and for some reason, I was filming a wedding by myself. The bride walking down the aisle was not recorded. When I tell you I had a heart attack. By the time she got down the aisle and I realized that record button was not red.
When did you realize?
Like, I was up there with the gimbal, because mind you, at that time, I was still a beginner, so I was so focused on making sure the gimbal was balanced, all the things, the audio.
Right.
There were so many things, because like I said, I do photo and video, so switching that brain to doing video was kind of hard. There's so many things. So when she got down there, I was like, it's not recorded. But what do I do?
What do I do? That's the only thing that matters.
Now we have to figure out, what do I do? Okay? So long story short, and the bride was like, this is a situation where it was such a blessing, because this woman was so cool. Like, she was so cool. But what I did was, I'm like, I can't let the day go forward. So once they leave and they exit, a lot of times after bride and groom's kiss and they go down, everybody leaves and they have to circle back for like family photos. Correct. So this is my time to say, hey, this happened with the down. But what we can do is, your dad's still here. Let's just redo it. Kevin.
Been there.
And she was like, cool. You cannot tell the difference.
Bro, sometimes honesty is the best policy.
Say it, and you can't wait. It's not like I didn't let the day go without it. And so that's what saved me. But when I tell you, hyper fixated on if that record button is happening.
Oh man, those things will make you stronger. Because I promise you will never do it again.
You build a thick skin on, like,
oh my gosh.
Okay, if I really have some sort of failure, how do I
rectify the situation?
Oh my God, how do I pivot? And that gives me the question for you now is, when you feel like you're failing, or when you experience failure, how do you continue? And let me specify. Let's say you feel like you're failing in an area, period. Do you say, I have to reinvent how I'm going through this? Or do you say, let me pivot entirely? Like, how do you deal with failure?
So
creative.
I think how I deal with failure as a creative, I'm honest with myself. I think it's very important to be honest with myself and realize and admit I can't do it all. It's okay to admit that. I can't do Photoshop.
Yeah.
Secret about it. Y'all can judge me if you want to. Because I mean, in my experience,
we're learning.
Surprise, you know, or learn it. In my experience, there are more, and don't y'all lie either. Don't y'all lie. There we are. My camera right here. Don't y'all lie either, because there's a lot of y'all out here that don't even know how to use Photoshop, and y'all completely famous. Like,
Photoshop is hard.
Not everybody knows. Like, it's a very delicate balance when it comes to the creative field and the industry, because you kind of figure out what you can get away with. Like, people that are making it, and that's why it's so important to not be comparing yourself to others, because you don't know what their journey was, how they got there. It's okay to admit that there's something that you don't know how to do, because we all don't know how to do something.
Yeah.
We all can't do everything. There's something that maybe somebody else is good at that I'm not good at. It's okay to ask questions. Like, I'm just honest with myself in those moments. If there's something I can't do, I'm not too prideful to ask someone, how do I do it? Or, hey, do you mind doing this for me?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Photoshop. Somebody asks, oh man, I need you to remove this thing, whatever. And I'm like, first of all, I'm at least going to try it. I'm going to try. If I don't know how to do it, or if I can't, it's not working, I'm going to ask. Shout out to my boy Scooby. He's like my pro bono Photoshop man. He just be cooking stuff
please
up.
Help.
Please help. And he just be, he'll just do it. So there's that. 2, I just try to give myself some grace. Self-talk always helps. You know, just work yourself through it. YouTube University is always free.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't know something, you can always learn it. And then, yeah, just kind of staying optimistic. Optimism is key. I feel like we're failing. Since we talk about failing, we are all failing in that department. I don't care what you're doing. Optimism is key. Don't be out here pessimistic. Don't be a pity party. Don't be a Debbie Downer. Like, there are more of us actually willing to help each other than there's not.
That's true.
So you're not helping your case trying to be the pity party. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Something's not working. Like, I want to believe in you, but I can't do anything about it if you don't even believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I need you to believe in yourself first.
I'll say though, when I feel like I'm failing,
I'll take a sip to that.
I'll say when I feel like I'm failing, which isn't necessarily often, I am hard on myself. When I feel like I'm failing, this is what I'll do. And Kevin knows at this point. I will cry about it. Let's start there. So don't be okay. It's like, be okay with like, I will cry about it for a second, especially if I feel like I put a lot of work into something. But then I will be like, okay, release that.
And that's fun.
And now what do I do?
There's nothing wrong with that though.
Now I get up and I either try at it again in a different way. Let's say this podcast idea failed a few times years prior because I was not prepared. This time I felt like, let's get it going. Like you understand video more, you understand audio more, like
Facts.
You can pull this together. But anyways, it's failed in the years before. I put it down and I say, okay, that sucks, but what do we do now?
What do we do?
I have to try again. Because some people feel like they're failing because they're like, oh, I've been blacklisted or whatever it's called on Instagram because they're not getting a lot of feedback.
Views.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, you have to kind of keep going. Like a lot of people don't have the follower count, they feel like they're failing. A lot of people don't have the engagement, they feel like they're failing. It's like, keep going.
And it's okay to pivot, it's okay to adjust, but as long as you just keep going, keep doing something.
Yeah.
Stagnancy and staying still is not where you want to be.
Yeah.
I always say if you don't like something, you only got two options. You can do nothing or you can change it.
Right. And sometimes keeping going is like showing up for the next thing, you know, in whatever way that works for you. But like quitting is just not
an option.
Yeah, exactly. Quitting is not an option. Sometimes you might just be like, you know what, I've tried so much on this this one thing. Let me just see what happens over here.
It's okay.
Going.
It's okay.
Showing up. And that's what we're asking you to do, to show up.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like because I know in our conversation that we had when we had our first wind down, we're talking about how you were interested in weddings or how, you know, I've gotten into this business. Do you feel like you're at a point where you're like, I'm trying to reinvent myself. I'm trying to be more this or more that when it comes to creativity?
It's a journey. I feel like, what's the saying that people use? Like it's never a destination, like it's a journey.
Yeah.
You know, you're not really going to one specific place. It's just a constant journey to get somewhere. You're never really just there where you're supposed to be. It's never ending.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to, like you said, reinvent myself because I don't want to get tired of it.
Yeah.
Like that was always my thing growing up. I was kind of weary of like working for places or whatever that I was a fan of. Like I always loved Nike, didn't want to work there. I said I wanted to work for the NBA, but I'm like, but if I work for my favorite team and if I hate it there, then I'm going to look at my favorite team as a negative. So I kind of got out of that, you know, like just go for it. If you love something, like go for it. If you're interested in it, go for it. So photography is kind of the same way with me. I don't want to fall out of love with it or out of like, but I can't put it down. Like clearly I have an affinity and an affection for it. So I'm trying to reinvent how I feel about it. That way it still feels fresh.
That's real because I think a lot of people think that when you don't feel it, that's when you can just quit. But like you said, you have to kind of work at keeping it fresh. You have to there's so many times where I'm just like, I don't want to be a business owner.
Yeah.
No. God. Like trust and believe. And I think people don't see that part. They're like, you are doing so well. I'm like, I hate it right now. But I have conversations like this with you, with my other friends, where I'm just like, what do I do now to be more present? Like, what do I do now to feel more joy? I don't want to just like throw the whole thing away. You know, that's not the goal, is to throw the whole thing away. But it's like you want to reconnect with it in a different manner. And I think that just is like, we want to reiterate that when it gets dull and mundane, because you do so much of one thing,
Yeah.
it will feel that way at some point. Even being creative, you have to work at connecting with it again, over and over again.
Burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it?
Oh my gosh. As someone who is currently dealing with a burnout, I, because I tend to overwork myself. Because, like I said, I want to move in a certain way when it comes to my creative quality, or when I showcase certain things, and sometimes that pushes me to the limits a little bit too much. And what I have told myself was, your goal. I circle back to that. What is your goal? And what is your goal? Your goal is to rest. Your goal is to put this down. So 7 o'clock hits, matter of fact, 6 o'clock hits, no one talk to me. Like, no one talk to me. I'm going to put these things down. There's times where I feel like, oh, I have to get a gallery done. And I say, it's 6 o'clock, it's 7 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock. Like, I'm going to go to happy hour with my friends. I'm going to go see my friends. Yeah. I want to live more life, and I'm going to start structuring more things. So a lot of times I have to build more boundaries around my life.
Absolutely.
So that I can recover.
You got to protect yourself from yourself.
Yeah, and I have to kind of, the same way I'm putting in effort to make this thing successful is the same way I'm putting in effort to recover, to give myself grace. It's like I need to also pour into that bag. My dad says pockets is to also like put more into that pocket. Like, take some out of that pocket, put it in that pocket, because you can't have a big pocket over here. Like, you have to keep everything kind of attended to. Yeah. So I'm still on my journey figuring it out, but that's been helping. I'm like, I'm not answering that email right now. And once you open that door, like, you're in it. I'm like, I'm about to go get in the tub for a little bit. I'm about to drink some wine. And that's because at the end of the day, you have one life. It's so cliche to say, but there's one life to live. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and be like, I really didn't utilize the time that I had because I'm so worried about success.
Perfect segue.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Look,
What's your segue?
The questions. I mean, at this point, this is my couch. So you mentioned you only get one life. Talk to me about time.
Yeah.
And making the most of time and wasting time.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. How do you make the most of time?
That has kind of been my priority lately, because one of my biggest fears right now is that I feel like I don't want to waste time.
Okay.
Because I am in my 30s now, and there became a point in time where I was so focused on the business because I felt like I needed to make this work. I felt like I had to make this work. I look back and I'm like, 6 months went by and I wasn't even present. Did not even live that life. I was in such a like automatic robotic mode and just showing up to wedding after wedding after wedding and editing. And I look back and I'm just like, I didn't really live life then. I didn't really, because I had to actually kind of learn to put it down, learn to show up to things with my friends, learn to do those things again. That's how deep I got with just not even living. It was like I had to, because like I said, there was a certain thing where I was like, oh, so-and-so's doing 50 weddings a year. That genuinely was not my goal. Yeah. And I'm like, I should be showing up to this. And you look back, you've missed birthdays and you've missed important events and just living life. You miss resting. And so many things had happened where I was like, dang, I'm over 30 now. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but to me, it was like, I'm over 30 now and I haven't enjoyed that at all. Scared me to my core. Yeah, I can't go back.
Have that like, I blinked.
Yeah, I blinked and I'm like, oh my, I can't remember 2022.
What happened?
Barely remember because it was wedding after wedding after wedding. And everyone was like, you're so successful. You're doing so well. And I'm like,
that's what it looks.
Well, that's what it looks like. I'm not living. I don't have a life. And that's what's important to me because I'm just like, what happens when this goes away? Because then the pandemic hit.
Got nothing to show for it besides
nothing
work.
To show for it. And I look back at young Angela and I'm just like, when I was a little girl, was I like, oh, I'm so proud of the 300 weddings I did. Like, yes, that's awesome. But I'm one of those people that's like, I'm so glad I got to spend time with my mom. I'm so glad I got to spend time with the dogs that I have, with my friends. Look at these connections I've made.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I take with me. Like, you know? So, like I said, I woke up one day and I was just like, it scares me to waste time. It's so terrifying. So I made a conscious effort now to not take on as many weddings, to pour into things like this that will live on. So if something ever happens to me, people know me and feel that like there was an authentic person behind that camera. And instead of being like, she just had to hit these goals, that financial goal, you can't take that money with you.
Yeah.
But the experiences that you've made with people when you showed up, those are the things that live on. You know, it's like I can't always show up for everyone else's memories and their moments. I'm not showing up for my own.
Come on.
So that has been that's
true. To piggyback off of that too, like it's crazy you say that because I think a lot of people can relate to that even if they're not a creative, but like especially if you're creative, it's emotionally draining. I do it because I love it. It's a feel. I'm attached to it. And then I want the people that I'm doing it for to feel that same connection.
Yeah.
That's what the crazy part about it. We have to pour into that, into whatever our medium is, hoping that's the hope. And when you get good enough, that's why you work at your craft and that's why you get paid for your craft. We get paid because there's the hope at the end. We poured so much into what we were trying to give to y'all at the end of the day, just to get that, oh my God, I love it. Oh, this is amazing. And then wine glass full.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep that up from how upbeat I was at 3 p.m. And that's why wedding photography for me, I can't. It's too much emotion for me.
Can we talk about that? Okay. Especially someone like me who is an empath. And I was talking about this yesterday with my other friends who are also photographers, where number one, there is a performance happening that you have to have because as creatives, we are also human beings. We're also human beings. And like I said, Kevin and I have these wind downs because this is hard on us, but also because we're living life. Like there's so many things that have happened in his life, in my personal life, and then we still have to show up to these things in a space where people feel us authentically and receive us authentically. And it's like you almost have to throw this mask
veil on.
Yeah. To be like, everything's fine.
Everything's fine. This is fine. It's okay.
Everything's fine. Are you good? Oh my God. Okay. So you're going to turn here. Oh. You're going to put your hair here. And you have to do that. And it's like, I literally was having a breakdown before I got here, but you would not know. You would not know at all. And then number two, that part of the empath is for weddings for me, there's so much going on. So if the bride is stressed, the groom is stressed, or just anybody's having any type of emotional distressing situation, I receive that. I receive that. And it's like, I go home, I've learned this, I go home with emotions that don't even belong
to me.
Emotions that don't even belong to me. And now I'm processing through that. And that happens every event, like every event. And I'm just like, that's part of it. It's part of it. And then sometimes I'll have 3 events in a weekend and I'm just like, sometimes I'll be, like I said, I'll text Kevin, I'm like, I'm not okay. but I have to put that down.
Bro, they should throw in like complimentary therapy with your Adobe subscription or something.
And I see, we're not in corporate, so we don't want to say that people in corporate don't have to do that. But all I'm saying is, as photographers and videographers and creatives, it's hard to tap into a creative space when you, number one, are going through your own thing, or when you are struggling to perform. It is not an easy thing. And there became a time where I was performing so much where it was like, I didn't even know how to cry. I didn't even know how to get. Yeah. My mom's like, you're being, you're acting like Superwoman. You're acting like you don't need anything. And I'm just like, this is the perform. I'm just trying to get through it. So I'm keeping this on, because if I shut it down, I probably won't even get out of bed. So that is another part that I think a lot of people don't realize is
it's hard.
It's a hard situation, because you have to tap into something that is in your heart to make money, to keep it going, to be
that too.
Yeah.
My livelihood.
Yeah.
My livelihood rests on this. My performance is the difference between whether I got food on my plate or these lights still cut on. Like exactly. It's life or death. Like that's what people don't understand about being business owners and creatives.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more emotion involved. Angela could go shoot a wedding, and it could be like an early thing from like, I don't know, 10 to 5 or whatever. And then she just emotionally got drained there. And then you're done. And then what? Y'all want me to come out to happy hour with y'all. And then I got to be present for that too. So now I'm emotionally tugged. Like the crazy thing is how do you find the balance?
Yeah.
How do you find the emotional balance? I'm being present for my people that matter in my life, and I want to go show up to happy hour or a birthday or a graduation, and I'll be present for there. But then I don't have enough for my gig or my wedding or my photo shoot. Or I got to go make this money. I got to show up for them, be present. Hey, okay, I want you to turn here. Okay, bright smiles. That's great. I love this. I give all that. Now I'm drained. But then you want me to show up for your dinner celebration at 6 tonight. And then I have nothing to give. Angela, why are you coming in here so deflated, so depressed? Girl, you could have stayed at home with all that.
It's like, that's something that I'm like, it makes sense because you have to pour in. Like this is a craft you have to pour yourself into. At least the way we do it. I'm sure there's someone that's like has it where there's a structure, but when you deal with different, every session is someone different. It's a different space. It's a different person. It's a different energy. You have, and it's up to you to like make it appear the best way it can, or make them feel as comfortable as it can. You're pouring in, you're utilizing so much energy. And then like you said, where is the balance? Because then you also need to show up as a daughter, a friend, a sister, sometimes a spouse, a parent, and you're like, and then what do I have for myself?
Mm-hmm.
So these are, it's one of those situations where you're just like, for me, like I said, I'm starting to put more boundaries, but I'm also not a parent. I'm also not a wife. Like, I don't know, like adding those things in and dating and all those other things. It's just like,
I think it's tough because we care.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like we actually want to show up and be present. And it's a choice. It is an option. It's a choice for us, even though it doesn't seem like it because there's livelihood and money at stake. But it sucks because we actually care. Like I mentioned, that's the difference between a regular photographer, or all you have to do is show up and click a button. First of all, it doesn't matter if you're a photographer. Like who just wants to go through life being good enough?
Yeah.
It's not it. I mean, if you're okay with that, then you need to reevaluate your life.
We don't want you to think that don't ever become a photographer.
Right.
But at the same time, these are the things that if you are looking at us on Instagram thinking like that is the most easy, beautiful thing to do,
don't piss me off.
We're just saying that there's other aspects to it that we deal with, especially because when we function and we want to show up, we want to connect with who we are capturing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not an easy thing to do at all times when you have your own life.
Speaking of your own life, I got another follow-up.
Yes.
Oh, rapid fire. So speaking to that and just being drained, and not having anything left. How do you talk to me about loneliness?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that was always intriguing to me. And somebody had brought this to my attention, like, oh man, that must be a lot. Like, how do you shoot all these weddings and you'd be empty? But then like, how do you deal with loneliness? One,
Yeah.
but then also two, how I don't want to call it difficult, but like, how is it navigating that in the profession of wedding photography? Because all you do,
Yeah.
it's like, it's almost like double-edged sword. Like, it's a credit to you because all you do is shoot love.
Yeah.
You're around love. You capture it. You know how to encapsulate it. So how do you even live in that space? Like,
I'm trying to figure out how honest can
have
I
you thought
be.
about that?
I have, because it's something that I is something that's like very present in my life. I'm in a very lonely season. I like to like, at least I'm gonna call it that at right now. Since I'm in my single season, in my lonely season, it's been hard because, like I said, I see people that have figured it out, or what appears to have been figured out. But when you spend the day with someone at their wedding, you're like, is this a relationship that I'm looking for? Like, certain things work for certain people.
True.
And like I said, when I capture a wedding, I'm there full day, so I get to know them through and through. I see how they speak to each other. Some weddings are so super, super beautiful, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like those people are an example.
Facts.
Then others, I'm like, you're here because this is what you think you should be doing. And I'm glad I get exposed to that as well. I think that also makes me a little bit more choosy when it comes to a partner. But how I combat those feelings is I reach out to my friends. I, try to seek friends. I mean, I'm dating, but I'm very, very picky with who I let in my circle and who I let be a part of my life and the journey that I want to be on. Because it's the same thing of, as a creative, I want to feel like things are authentic and deep and true and safe. And it's kind of hard to find that when I think people are chasing what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, people are chasing what it's supposed to look like when I'm chasing what I want to feel.
True.
And because I'm doing that with what feels right, I have to say, okay, you have to kind of be a little more cautious. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to, but then I have these conversations with you and I'm just like, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's not easy. It gets very lonely. I go read and I sip my wine and I pray and I go to church and I do all the things where I'm just like, you're worthy, and you're not looking just for a partner for what it looks like. You're looking for a real connection. Yeah. So
we didn't turn to Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
We get into it.
Can y'all let me know if y'all like Kevin on
just about to say, notice I said we get into
oh my
it.
if y'all want to see him on a further episode, because we gonna be on here for another 2 hours.
Comments but never lie.
Please tell me if you like Kevin. We're planning on later in the season.
It's not an episode. This is a series.
We're planning on later in the season kind of doing a questions card game so y'all can get to know us more. And if you like for us to wind down more and more, just let us know.
I do mimosas. This is mimosas in here.
This was fun. This is probably our longest podcast, but this is what we
just getting started. This is easy.
So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm thankful that you came.
Thankful for you.
Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be another part 2. We'll do a different topic on life and love and whatever you guys want us to talk about. But again, thank you for listening, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.